ventilation systems, looking at that. The other big part is the social distancing. There are two parts to the social distancing part of the plan, and that is adults coming into the building, as well as the social distancing required for the instructional with students and staff members as well. The other piece, obviously, that's integral to the plan is the monitoring. As Dr. Fegley said at the outset, the safety of all students is paramount in our staff. And so looking at things that, such as masks, temperature checks, barriers, those kinds of things are all being looked at by this committee. How much do we need? When do we need them? And then lastly, other considerations would be outside use of the facilities, what that would look like. And then also the communication plans that obviously Mrs. Claus would be intimately involved with. So all of those would be that. And then there are two other plans that feed into this plan, and that is our activities and as well as our sports. And we just received guidance just as early as yesterday with regards to PIAA recommendations, and the administrative team is working through that. We know folks want to get back to sports. We want that too, but we want to do it in a safe manner. So this team will be meeting regularly, and we'll have a recommendation by June 22nd. The plan will be submitted for board approval.
Thank you, Dr. Whitehead.
Welcome.
And I need to knock out the questions as I'm trying to get those written down. Okay, so our goal, as Dr. Whitehead said, is to have the preliminary plan ready for the board approval in June. The final plan, we're looking for July or August of 2020 in order to have that ready to go. Sports. Here's one of the big ones that's coming out right now. As most of you know, yesterday, the Pennsylvania Department of Education provided guidance to school districts on how to open up sports programs. They actually did it for colleges, pro sports, and youth sports, and for K-12 schools. They have indicated that we can open, but we also have to get, as Dr. Whitehead said, the pandemic plan to the board for approval before we're allowed to open. We are trying to determine how to do this honestly countywide, and we are waiting for some additional guidance from PIAA, that's Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association, to give us guidance on how we can move forward with opening up any of the sports programs. Right now, the only part that's being talked about is, are the voluntary practices run by the captains. So we're having some discussions around that as to how that might take place starting July 1. So right now for us, this is a July 1 date, and that's assumed that we can get a pandemic plan in and approved.
Dr. Fegley?
Yes.
Excuse me, just a second. We are live on our YouTube channel. So if you know someone who was not able to get in, and our apologies, we thought webinar had a larger, that's why we did it. One of the reasons, because we could get more people in. If you go to YouTube and go to Phoenix Hill Area School District, you can watch it live. So I'm going to try and respond to the people who have emailed me real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Technology. In order to be as flexible as we need to be, we know that we must have computer access, technology access for all students next year. So we are looking at becoming what most places call one-to-one, that there will be a device for each child. We're hoping to have the recommendations to the board early next week so that they can start looking over how we will go about doing this as a district, but it's a work in progress. The good news is our technology department is really good. They were able to get all the computers out, over 500 computers out very quickly for those students who absolutely had no access to technology at the start. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at Wi-Fi, because that's one of the big challenges for some families. How can we make sure that they have the Wi-Fi they need if we are out online? We don't have the answers to that yet. We were talking with representatives today about how they might help us get some E-rate money, that's special money that are out there that helps reduce the cost by about 50%, so we can provide Wi-Fi. Right now, that program does not allow us to spend money on Wi-Fi, but we're working with the local representatives to see if we cannot get that possibility for us. And honestly, we're seeking alternative funding. we have a funding gap. It's going to be over $1 million worth of computers that need to be purchased. We have not fully budgeted for that because we just don't have that full budget, but we will still be working on getting that. And we believe we can get it through some alternative funding. So we have started to apply for grants. Another possible way is for folks, if you are interested, if you go to the Phoenixville Community Education Foundation and consider contributing to the Get Together We Can Fund. We've teamed up with the Phoenixville Community Ed Foundation and have raised over $70,000 so far to help make sure that students are fed throughout the summer. We're also in this now to sit there and see if we can't make sure that we have dollars available so we can make sure that every student has a computer next year when they return to school. So that is our goal. If you so desire, please consider the Community Education Foundation. Additionally, if you know some other sources, other grant opportunities that can help us, please let us know. Erica Kleinstedt, who's our grant writer, has been doing an outstanding job. She's brought in a number of grants over this time period, and we're still looking for more grants so that we can really make sure that we have the right technology in place for all students next year. Our next area is curriculum instruction, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kilmetz and Dr. Whitehead. Dr. Kilmetz, I think you're beginning.
So one of the questions that obviously all of us are concerned about is preventing summer slide. Considering our current circumstances, it's possible that some students, might see an even greater slide over the summer than what we've seen in the past. And we'd like to work with you all to prevent that. And research shows us that the best way to do that is to keep your children reading over the course of the summer. I'm sure some of you have heard me say that many times before, but it's completely true. We did give out a lot of books at the food distribution sites over the last couple of months, and we still have more books to give. We held a book drive recently. Thank you to all of you who donated. And we're excited that we have so many books that we're still able to give. So summer reading is really, really important. Please feel free to reach out and contact me if you are in need of additional books in your home. We have plenty to still be able to give. And we'd love to get them in your hands and in your home libraries. We also have posted on our website some summer reading assignments, and that's for students in grades K through 12. In grades K through 8, we have summer math assignments as well. All of that information is posted on our website. And you should know that your students will have access to the software that they currently have access to throughout most of the summer. There are some times when we're doing some program rollover, but for the most part, your students will be able to access a lot of the software that they had access to over the course of the school year. And we would encourage you to get your child engaged with that software and those platforms over some of the summer anyway. At the elementary level, we've also posted, or will be posting any day now, some summer resources for both parents and students on Canvas. So your students will have access to that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kilmetz. I would just add very quickly, obviously, all curricular development will be consistent with all state standards. So there's no difference between the curriculum implementation and the content in terms of that. If the modality may change in terms of how you're accessing that content with whichever plan winds up being initiated. Just a brief comment, we've had a virtual academy for a number of years here in the Phoenixville Area School District. And we were actually, prior to the pandemic and prior to the March 13th closure, we were moving very rapidly to much more additional robust online programming for our students, particularly obviously at the secondary level, high school specifically, and even talking about the middle school level. Obviously, we had to quickly retool and add the elementary piece as of March 13th. So we were actually positioned very well, which is why we were able to be nimble and do it as quickly as we did. And that's a credit, quite frankly, to our hardworking staff, our curriculum department, and our district coordinators and our building principals too as well. And then as Dr. Kilmetz mentioned, Canvas will continue to be kind of our main learning management system, along with utilization of Zoom and some of the other educational learning tools that we use that coordinate with Canvas. And as Dr. Kilmetz said, they will continue to be available other than those rollover periods.
Thank you. One of the questions to build off that came in is, the parent says they have a high school student and they were wondering if they might be able to, and they're very interested in science, and they're wondering if they go virtual, they're concerned about the labs.
Yep.
And that's one of the things we've been working on, Doctor, that we'll make sure we have labs available. But why don't you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, it's a very timely question, because we had that conversation on the pandemic meeting, the pandemic team meeting today, and one of our staff members, teacher members of the pandemic team is Ms. Davies, who's a high school teacher, a science teacher, and so we are working through that. Part of the plans that we are talking about are, for example, obviously we would have social distancing requirements, so there would be a reduced numbers of students in the class. Maybe one particular student handles the manipulatives for the lab. There's no cross handing of that material. So let's say you have 3 or 4 lab partners, social distancing. One particular student would be the person that handles the materials and not handling it others. The other person would be the record keeper and the note taker for the lab that's occurring. And the other person would be the person to present, out their findings. So one of the pieces that is required, obviously, is the professional development. So that, if I'm a science teacher and I'm implementing this lab with social distancing, that's going to require a rethinking on my part. So we will have to have time, and we're building that time into a more expanded in-service schedule that we're working on for our staffs to retool that way. So we want to be able to give those experiences, but we want our students and staff to be safe.
And also to be very clear, so yes, if your child is virtual and it requires a lab because it's a science or biology class, we are working on having your child come in then to do labs in the building for that period. But the rest of the time, they will be able to be virtual. Correct. So just want to make sure that we have that. Another question was about funds. How are we going to try to pay for this? And I indicated we're looking for lots of grants. The one part I forgot to talk about was the money that we have saved so far this year. So since March 13th, we have worked very, very hard at reducing our spending in all areas that we can, while putting some of that money into the new areas that we needed to. But one place we were able to save a tremendous amount of money was in our electric bill and our gas and heating bill. So literally over the last 2-3 months, the district has saved almost, or over at this point, $70,000 in electricity. That money is being taken over and put into in a special account that we will have as extra funds for next year to help provide the additional resources that we need to keep running the school with all the new additions that are going to be necessary. So that's just one example of areas that we've saved money. Another area which probably wouldn't surprise you is in printing costs. Our printing costs went way down. So those funds are being taken over and are going to be used to help also offset the costs that we need for computers, et cetera, next year. Are there, let's see, Mrs. Claus, there's lots of other questions. Which one?
There
Real quick, sorry, Mrs. Claus, I would like to jump in real quick. I just want to add an additional piece to what Dr. Fagley was saying in regards to the cost savings. One of the things that we've been very passionate about doing and have been successful in is not laying anyone off during this closure time. For those that would have been laid off, we've found alternative jobs. And for those that would be in the buildings, for example, our maintenance and janitorial staff, because the students aren't there, we've been able to do many of the projects, and will continue to do many of the projects that either would normally happen during the summer in a condensed time frame, or that we would have had to outsource. So for example, Barclay was in much need, for those Barclay families who might be watching, of a paint job. It was old wallpaper that desperately needed to be taken down and cleaned up. And so our staff has been working very hard over the last month doing that project, which we would have had to outsource. So that alone was a $50,000 savings. So that's another really important point for folks to know that there are these areas that we're saving money and still making sure that our staff is working. Thank you.
So Dr. Fagley, I'm seeing a number of questions, and I apologize because I was trying to get us onto YouTube and I was not listening real closely. So this may have been answered already, but there are questions about if you start out in virtual or actually in the building and something happens and you need to switch or want to switch. What's that going to look like? Do we know yet?
We are still working on that. We do realize people are going to want to move. Now, at one point, there may not be an option. And what do I mean by that? we may be going along in the building, and so we have our in-building program going, and then we may also, then we'll have our virtual program also running. But suddenly what takes place is we're told by the governor or the Department of Health that we need to close because the outbreak has increased. At that point, we will close at the end of that school day, or as soon as we can close. We will then move on to a virtual platform the next day for all. So at that point, everyone will go virtual. So I want to be clear about that part. That said, we are looking at, and we understand that some families during the year may be in the building and then become more uncomfortable as they're seeing the situation change. Yes, we're looking to help make sure that they can go virtual, and the same circumstances may change where someone is virtual and then they want to come back into the building. And so we're looking at doing that. We still have to work all those out, but to Dr. Whitehead's earlier point, our goal is to make sure that the virtual program and the building program are totally aligned. So that should be relatively seamless to go back and forth between the two programs. So yes, thank you. Great question.
There are several questions too about the A and B days and how that would work. So again, I apologize if this has been addressed, but there's can you explain how an A and B day would work for high school students? Would certain classes be in person like math and science? Would A and B days be the same every week? So that you would, if you're on A, you would be what, Monday, Tuesday, and if you're B, you're. So I think, can we address that if we have not already?
Yeah, I'll elaborate a little bit. I did talk about it, but I'll elaborate a little bit. We're still kind of working out those fine details in terms of exactly how we want to structure it in terms of numbers. So we're trying to we want to run a consistent schedule. So the desire ultimately is to have consistent A and B days so that people can get into a routine. Parents can get into a routine, students can get a routine, staff members can get into a routine. But we realize that there may be, as Dr. Fagley mentioned, there may be circumstances where we'll have disruptions and we're going to have to be flexible, which is why the planning that the staff will be working on is really concurrent planning, meaning that we would be able to shift all of us to the virtual world, everybody, whether we're brick and mortar or whether we're not, with a seamless transition right away. And so that piece is critical. The other piece that we're working on, obviously, it's difficult with the large comprehensive high school. It's difficult. That's a big catalog of classes with electives and things like that. It's just simply not going to be feasible not to have all of them running at the same time. So we're going to have to make some tough choices, but we're going to try to offer a real wide opportunity for our students as well. What's important is we want some of our accelerated classes to make sure that they're running. Obviously, our AP classes are very important to be running for our high school students. So we're really working hard to have as many of the courses up and running and having a virtual opportunity as well through that. So we do want to have a consistent A day, B day. The middle school and the high school are going to look a little bit different as they should. That's developmentally appropriate. And so the core academic areas, and I think I saw one question about math clustering and leveling. That's critical. We want students to make sure that they're maintaining. We have a lot of students that are decoupled, meaning that they're in middle school in 7th or 8th grade, but they're taking high school level courses. We want to make sure that we accommodate that need as well. We're working through whether that's going to be a virtual way to do that through cameras with synchronous, where a student may be in one building, but watching the class going on in another building. So we're working through a lot of those details, but we do want to have a consistent schedule so that folks can get into a routine.
Great, thank you. I see several questions about fresh air and the ventilation system that have come up. So I've learned more about ventilation systems in the last couple of weeks than I ever thought I would know. I didn't know I would get my HVAC contract license. And I'm not quite there yet, but I have learned the following for our ventilation systems. The way our classrooms are set up, each classroom has its own ventilation system. And in each room, we are able to change the fresh air intake from 10% all the way up to 100%. So we're able to move that fresh air intake. And I actually thought it had been limited several weeks ago to 30%, but we can take it all the way up to 100% fresh air coming in through the ventilation system. We're going to be working, I know Dr. Whitehead has been in conversations already with folks who are experts in this area, and we're looking at any other measures that we may need to take, but I'm pleased to be able to say we can get fresh air into the classrooms. And we talked about the other questions, Mrs. Claus. I'm trying to read.
Looking at, someone said, would love the kindergarten drive-by. Will there be an opportunity for my son to tour the building and meet his teacher, even if we are remotely learning when we start?
That's really a great question. I'll let Dr. Kilmes, you want to take it, but I actually have talked to a number of teachers at the Early Learning Center in the last few days, and they are very, very clear that their biggest concern is developing the relationships with their virtual students if we come back virtually. And they want to be able to meet the students. And actually, so as I talk to other teachers, they want to be able to meet their students, even if they're virtual, and they want to be able to meet them in person. So we've got to look at ways. We're not sure exactly how to do that yet, but we must look at ways of how do we go about doing that, because that connection is vital. And that's actually what a number of the teachers have said to me, that the reason the virtual worked this time was because they knew the students so well. So those are the pieces we've got to make sure that we build into the virtual world.
And Dr. Kilmes, when you get ready to answer, I have somebody who's saying, please don't forget about the older kids. They need face-to-face instruction too. So go for it.
We want to be able to interact with students in person as much as we possibly can, and our plans will allow for that as much as we are allowed to. But I also wanted to mention too that, from a curriculum and instruction standpoint, we've spent a lot of time over the past couple of years talking about social emotional learning and student needs, and really making sure that we have that at the forefront of all of our instruction. Student personalities, needs, they come first, even before the curriculum. And so we want to accommodate every child. We want to adapt and adjust for every child. We want to build strong relationships between every teacher and every child. That really is at the forefront of our teachers' minds for sure. And our curriculum allows time and flexibility to do that in many different ways.
I have someone asking about the survey link, and I'm just going to put it at I'm not even going to type, I'm just going to respond to it. It is on the website. So at the very top of the web page, we have, if you go to pasd.com, we have the survey links up there, and you can go in and get to it. So I apologize, trying to get to it from here is a little bit difficult. All right, let me see what else we've got here. Have we talked about transportation? Have you talked much? Okay. All right. There's some questions about transportation. What are we looking at?
I guess I'll jump in, and then Dr. Fegley, you can jump in.
Sure.
So transportation is actually an integral part of the health and safety plan. There's a lot to be fleshed out with transportation and the social distancing requirements. One of the things that we actually talked about today was obviously the protection of the driver. So we're working very close. Our transportation supervisor is working very closely with Wolfington, our transportation provider, with regards to what equipment upgrades need to occur on the bus. So for example, when you look at SEPTA and certain large public transportation systems, they're putting barriers around the driver. The drivers have found that the actual N95 masks are difficult because they're moving their heads to check, when they're driving, that maybe a shield would be better. So, and so we're having those kinds of discussions about what PPE, personal protective equipment, do the drivers need in order to do that. Then we have to begin having conversations about, can siblings, be in the, their social distancing going to be different than the non-related students? How far apart can we get them? How many students can we actually get on the bus? Is that going to impact our routing? So there's a lot of details right now yet to be worked out with transportation. We also have to factor in how many parents won't be comfortable using transportation and will want to drive their own child to school. Dr. Fegley, I don't know if you want to comment any more on that.
No, that's correct. We believe that mid to late July, we will be sending out a survey to all parents about transportation, trying to learn what your comfort levels are with the information we have at that time. this is one of the areas that the information keeps changing constantly, and we're not sure exactly what we'll be doing. And when I say the information from PDE is changing in particular on this. So we don't have the full answer for you right now. We are trying to figure out how best to transport all the children in the morning. Transportation, though, in fairness, could be one of the reasons we need to go to AB days, because we may have to be able to separate out the children enough on the bus. So those are parts of the, shall we say, big jigsaw puzzle that we're trying to put together in order to figure out how best to open this coming fall.
We have some questions about the special area classes, band, chorus, art. Dr. Kilmetz, can you possibly address that?
We obviously are in great support of the arts, and we continue to want to provide those opportunities to your students. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like just yet, so there will be more information to come on that. Obviously, there's a lot to consider with the sharing of materials and social distancing requirements.
And a really important question, Dr. Fagley, will elementary students be able to have recess?
They need recess. We have to, so let's start with the need, and then we have to go and figure out how we can safely do it. And that's the part we have to really look at hard. So we're not sure exactly how it will take place, but yes, they need recess. They need to be able to move around. They're not going to be able to sit in their desks all day long and even just do exercises in the classroom. We all know how rammy they become on a rainy day or a cold day. It just doesn't work. Along that same line, there was a question in, well, it's kind of the same line of participation in extracurriculars. And it's about band, choir, and sports. If you're in our virtual world, you are going to be allowed, and we're going to encourage you to come in and participate in any of the sports programs, the band programs, any of those extracurricular activity programs. We understand that you may want to keep the distance and not participate, but yes, if you are in the virtual world in the Phoenixville Area School District, you are eligible to come in and participate in any of the extracurricular activities. Some of the extracurricular activities we're actually looking at how can we put online. But we may be able to run some of them virtually for you as well, but it's very important. The other part is we're very fortunate to have Mr. Justin McAdams as our band director. He is actually part of the PMA, the Pennsylvania Music Association. He's one of the lead members of it. So he is working right now on coming up with what are the plans for how do we make sure we can keep running band and chorus and marching band. It's a great challenge for us because when you think of singing in chorus, you are really projecting your breath way out, and we don't believe you can really wear a mask. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. In the band, some of the same things. You have your instruments blowing the wind a great deal. Marching band, I can tell you, Mr. McAdams has already talked to me about. He's going to have a what is it called? The marching band program. Everyone's going to be socially distanced, so everyone will be 6 feet apart, and we'll make sure that we're able to do that in a safe manner. So by having him on board, plus having such great music and art staff, we will make sure that we have the music and arts programs running next year in a very strong fashion.
We have several questions about masks. So will we be requiring masks for the youngest students? Will they be wearing masks all day? Are we providing the masks?
All questions we're trying to work on. Respectfully, I don't know that any of us can keep a mask on all day. So we have to be able to socially distance. That's what they're telling us. Once you're socially distanced, you can take your mask off. We are going to be looking at having masks for folks and providing masks. We're also going to encourage people to please buy your own mask so that you have it. If we provide a mask, it's going to look the same for everybody. And the kids, as you know, with water bottles, if they all look the same, everyone's sharing a water bottle. We've got to get the differences out there. But we will have masks that are available for folks. We are going to be selling masks. We are going to be providing masks, and we are all going to have to work together on that. But I think the masks, from what we're hearing right now, will need to be worn when a student is moving around, the teacher is moving around, and or when they're in public areas in general, like walking down the hallways. Hopefully, once they're at their desk, we'll have the guidance that allows us to say they can keep their mask off, take their mask off. Having tried to wear my mask yesterday throughout the entire parade, I can tell you how hot and uncomfortable it can become.
So we do, Dr. Fake, they have a group of volunteers who are making masks.
Oh, that's true. The mask makers. I guess they call them the COVID mask makers is their name. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they are doing a great job. They have volunteered to make over 1,000 masks for our students. And I believe they're also making 500 shields for our staff to be able to use. Because we're also trying to figure out, teaching is a very visual activity. Dr. Kilmetz can probably explain it much better than I can. And to have your as a teacher, to have your face behind a mask the entire time when you're trying to teach a child is difficult. So we're looking at how can we have a clear shield over the teacher's face so that he or she would be, the students would be able to see their face and their facial expressions during that time. So it is a great group. And if anyone is interested in helping them, they're not only making masks for us, but they're making masks for other folks. I think they started with healthcare workers at the very beginning. And they, if you're so inclined, again, they're looking for some donations to help offset the costs, because they're providing the masks to the district free of charge for all our free and reduced lunch students.
And PCF, the PCF Together We Can Fund, there will accept donations that will go towards the mask makers. So if you would like to do that for a $20 donation, that would actually account for 5 masks for 5 children. So it's and they're doing crocheted ear protectors as well. So if you've worn a mask for very long, I mean, your ears go down, flopping down. So they're a wonderful group, and they've just been so incredibly giving and so supportive already. So there've been a couple of questions about siblings. If you have a child in different, if one family has children in multiple buildings, and we do go on a split schedule of some sort, an AB day, will we ensure that everyone in the same family is on the same schedule?
We will certainly endeavor and try to do that. The difficulty is the modified block kind of schedule at the high school is going to look a little different than the AB schedule at the middle school, but certainly, if we can accommodate that, we would definitely want to do that.
Someone says, we love the mask you were wearing yesterday with the phantom on them, Dr. Fegley, and I believe Blake and Dr. Whitehead, I'm not sure who all had them on. They're wanting to know if they can purchase those.
Those were obtained by Dr. Parkinson. I will find out if he has extras for sale. And that's actually one of the ones that we're looking at. We're looking at multiple manufacturers for our masks. So yes.
I have a couple of questions about if students are not feeling well. And so it's one of them, how will students be encouraged to stay home if they are not feeling well, even if it is just the common cold? And will an easy flip to online be provided to facilitate this?
So I'll take that one. Again, we have a number of parents who are serving on the team, on the pandemic team, who have medical backgrounds and actually work for Phoenix Hospital. So it's been very, very helpful to have their perspective. And of course, we have one of our own certified school nurses also on the team as well. One of the things that we talked about today was hopefully early screening. So things like making sure that all students enter through one central location, possibly having a monitoring device that would actually sense temperatures if needed. And then, if there is an indication that a child is not feeling well, quickly quarantining of that child and notification to the parent to make sure that the parent knows, that we're probing a little deeper to find out if the child is medically okay, to medically check them. So we're working through those protocols. Our school nurses are working through that in tandem with the medical parents who are on the committee with regards to that. But screenings will be quick. And the other piece that we talked about earlier, one of the advantages and one of the reasons why we want teachers to move and not children is tracing. Medical professionals tell us that tracing and that quick tracing is very critical, as we would have to report that to the health officials. So to be able to quickly trace that exposure back is very critical. So those are all pieces that we're working through But that is definitely something that is part of the health and safety plan, the monitoring of students' health.
I could just add to that from an instructional standpoint too. You know, if your child does need to stay home because he or she is sick, that's not going to be a problem. We are, you know, going to be integrating virtual content into all of our classes, even when they're taught in person, so that should we all need to move virtually, like Dr. Fegley said, at the drop of a hat, we would be able to do that. Students would be prepared, families would be prepared. We want to make sure that that virtual content is still a component, even if we are in a hybrid or in-person model.
So Dr. Kilmetz, a little bit of a follow-up, kind of a segue into, will teachers be responsible for both physical classrooms and virtual classrooms, or do we anticipate that there will just be, they will just be teaching one type?
We haven't fully fleshed that out just yet, so that will be in a future update. We are, again, trying to be flexible and trying to accommodate needs. So more to come on that.
Couple of questions in here about mental health supports for students. What type of things are we anticipating? I'm not sure who wants to take this one.
Sure, I can take that one. So Mr. Ramsey, our Director of Student Personnel Services, is working with our board certified behavioral analysts. So we have 3 board certified behavior analysts on staff. They have been working this summer in developing a plan, working in tandem with our Lakeside contracted mental health providers who we also have on staff to develop a plan for the return of students. You know, clearly this has been a traumatic event for students and for parents. I was talking to a parent today who is a healthcare person, and you know, they were talking about the anxiety that their own child has when they go to work every day, and explaining that and having those conversations. So we're talking about creating social stories for younger students to work through that, to having just some open time for students to have conversations in the classroom and express their feelings. And then if needed, a more structured support in the form of counselors on hand. Our counselors are working very hard identifying a pre-screening process as well for early identification for students that may be having issues as well. So those plans are ongoing, and if we need some more support, we'll certainly provide it.
Okay.
While you're looking at that, your question, there's one that came in rather early about how are we going to monitor the tests for high school and middle school students? I think they're indicating that they're a little concerned that some may not be always honest and get extra help on their exams. They asked if there's going to be a video of them taking the exam, but I know we've had some preliminary conversations on how to go about this. Dr. Kilmetz or Dr. Whitehead?
You want to start, Dr. Kilmetz? I'll leave you.
Sure. We have had preliminary conversations about that. Again, in the last few months, we haven't gone to the supervision of tests in that Zoom setting fashion, as somebody suggested, but it's certainly part of our conversations, as we do know that this is, you know, in some realms, a fairly common practice. So we are looking at it. We're also looking at, you know, just potentially having a notification to parents. Some teachers did a great job with that this year. And we will probably formalize that process for next year as well, so that parents are notified when a test is, and that we expect students to be completing it independently, so that we can really gauge and use the assessment data to tailor our instruction. That's our goal with assessment. It's never a summative sort of cutoff. We're using it to make sure that we can adapt and adjust instruction for all students. And so that assessment data is really critical for us to get.
And I would just add that the state is also now permitting our comprehensive diagnostic test in terms of what we call CDTs. They're now permitted to be done via online. And again, that's kind of the tests that we use in between PSSAs to really adjust our instruction and the pacing of our instruction. So, and that's now fully available, but the state is permitting it to be done online as well.
We are down to our last 5 minutes. So I would like to give the four of you an opportunity, if you have kind of closing thoughts. And actually, I'm going to just start with it and let everyone know that the questions, there's some questions or comments that are in here. So as some about parent training, the use of modular classrooms, eliminating all transportation. I'm writing down all of those things that we don't necessarily have answers for, but something to make sure that those are issues that we do address and that we look at. We will be creating an FAQ that will be going onto the website as well, that hopefully will start to answer all of these questions. So Mrs. Emanuel, can start with you if you have anything that you'd like to say in closing.
Sure, thank you. So my greatest ask would be simply that any thoughts, concerns, questions that weren't answered, that you share them with the administration and with the board. We do absolutely want to hear from you. We want to know what concerns you have, what questions you have, how we can make sure that we're meeting everybody's needs to the best of our abilities. And we just thank you so much. It is so hard. I say this as a working parent as well. It is hard to manage your child's education at home while you're working at home, while you're doing everything else. So we really appreciate everything that our families are doing and all this time and energy that everyone's putting in. And the teachers have done a phenomenal job, and just we're really proud of everything that our district has done. So keep up the communication and stay sane, please. Thank you.
Dr. Kilmetz?
I would just like to add, and echo those sentiments. We are here to support you and your families and your children. We are considering how to better help parents and help families adapt to virtual instruction or hybrid instruction. There will be parent trainings. We will have opportunities to really make sure that everybody feels comfortable tackling the challenges that this new world brings. So thank you for all you've done.
Dr. Whitehead?
Sure, I agree with everything that was just said. I would just add that, it's our goal, obviously, is to keep people safe. And so a big component of that is the flexibility that will be needed going back and forth from virtual world to brick and mortar and that's really what a central core of what we're working toward from an instructional standpoint and from a curricular implementation standpoint. And so I just want to thank everybody. I know our teachers are working very, very, very hard because we were obviously very rushed and had just days to plan that fourth marking period. But now we have a little time. We can step back, we can take a breath and really systemically look at all the pieces from transportation to food distribution, to monitoring student health, to physical plants, to facilities and operations. Looking at all those components now, we're looking at it systemically and holistically, and input from the community is absolutely critical. So thank you all for your input and being here tonight.
And Dr. Fagley?
Thank you, Mrs. Claus. In addition to saying thank you to everyone for being here this evening, I'm going to run through 3 questions or 4 questions real quick. People had asked about the computers and that we had put out a survey. Would you want to buy your own computer, and could it be an Apple computer? The quick answer is yes. So if we're going to bring your own computer, you can bring any computer that you want. It is important for everyone to know that both our virtual program and our in-building program are going to be equal programs next year. So the exams, all that will be equal. So there's not going to be a difference in rigor level between the 2 programs. They will be equal programs. That is our commitment, because we must make sure that all children receive a great education. The last quick piece is, will the Y be providing the daycare during the A or B day that your child is not with the teacher? That answer is actually no. It's not going to be daycare. It is going to be a different learning setting for your child, run by our own faculty and staff. So our faculty and staff are running the full program during our normal business hours. It's before and after school care that will be run by the Y. They're doing our after school care. With that, these questions are great. I know Mrs. Claus is getting them down. We'll answer them all in an FAQ. Thank you all for being here this evening. Really, really appreciate your time. I look forward to, well, not seeing you, but at least having you join in 2 weeks when we have our next session. And at that point, we should have many more answers for you, including where the pandemic program is going, some finalization on how programs are going to be opening up. So thank you very much. Have a great evening.
And we will sure.
Sorry, real quick, Mrs. Claus. I just want to say, for those of you who may know somebody who tried to get in but couldn't get in, It's on YouTube. We'll get a link out. It was recorded. So keep an eye out for more information. If I just stole your line, Ms.
You did.
Apologize.
Okay.
Read your mind.
Yes, so we will work on making sure, we'll look at expanding our Zoom account so that we can get everybody in here for the next one. My apologies. We thought with the Zoom webinar that was one of the features, and apparently it's not. So
We're all learning all the time, Mrs.
we
Claus.
are. I learn something new every single day.
Good news is we can
Unfortunately.
connect them. That's wonderful. Thank you all for being
Yeah,
so
thank you
involved
so
and so
much.
caring.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for attending, everyone.
All right.
Thank you very much. Did Blake already run off? Boy, before I even had a chance to thank her, thank you, Jess. Thank you, Leroy. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Got some good feedback.
Yeah, it's the beginning of learning a lot, which is good.
I'm gonna, by the time I finally really learn how to do all of the Zoom things, we're going to be done. And
We'll be
I
back.
don't know. I actually have a feeling some of this is going to stick around for years to come now.
Yeah.
I really do.
I do too. I think we'll be doing many more virtual night meetings.
Yeah, it's quicker, it's easier.
Have a good evening, everyone.
yeah.
You guys.
All right. I'm going to go ahead. Everybody. Do you all want to stand up? He's done. All right. I'm going to end the meeting for everybody. Bye.